Good morning to our viewers in the United States, and good evening to our viewers in Afghanistan. Thank you all for joining us for today's special edition of AC, Atlantic Council Front Page, in partnership with the George W. Bush Institute. I'm Paula Dobriansky. I'm on the board of the Atlantic Council and also vice chair of the Scowcroft Center for Strategy and Security. Today's conversation comes at a very crucial time for Afghanistan. Afghanistan sits at a very key inflection point, with peace negotiations currently ongoing between the Taliban and the Afghan government in Doha. Though these talks give hope for an end to decades of war in Afghanistan, they also do raise certain concerns. It is truly vital that we remain vigilant in protecting the goals and the gains that have been made on behalf of women and girls' rights in Afghanistan, as well as those marginalized voices more generally. In the last 2 decades, particularly as the negotiations have been underway, the peace talks represent a major opportunity to really ensure that these gains are cemented. I'd like to mention that back in September, when these talks began and got underway, at the time initiated by former Secretary of State Madeleine Albright, the Atlantic Council's member of the International Advisory Board, she initiated a statement, and over 100 former heads of state, prime ministers, foreign ministers, among many others, issued a statement on the role of women in the peace process. And I would like to just share with you a few words from that statement. It went on to say that we call upon all relevant national, regional, and international actors to pursue a peaceful, stable Afghanistan by ensuring women's full participation in the peace process. After 40 years of conflict, this may finally be an opportunity for peace. The international community has an obligation to assist with ensuring that the peace forged is durable and that there's an opportunity, that this opportunity is not squandered. Very significantly, the statement goes on to say that with the peace process underway, that also the international community should prioritize women's meaningful inclusion in order to help obtain the long-term security goals that we have been working towards for decades. We have already seen meaningful progress in Afghanistan since the women began to be inaugurated and integrated into society as equal citizens. And very significantly, the statement says that given the key role of women in ensuring a durable peace, that the following measures are absolutely necessary. That women need to be part of the negotiations and not just an issue to be discussed. That women must be involved throughout every step of this process. And that also the perspective of women and youth must be reflected in any agreement, and that this is a key issue that has to be part of this process going forward. Clearly, the discussions that we will hold today are very key, that you will be hearing very soon, but they represent only the beginning of a long road which we must support Afghans as drivers of their own future. The war may indeed involve, and it has had many actors engaged in it, but the future of Afghanistan is undoubtedly Afghan. I am delighted now to be able to introduce our very own former First Lady of the United States, Mrs. Laura Bush. First Lady Laura Bush has long championed the cause of women and girls' rights in Afghanistan. And through her very long-standing and involvement and dedication in the U.S. Afghan Women's Council, of which she is an honorary council member, and also through her dedication and involvement and leadership in the George W. Bush Presidential Center. Mrs. Bush has worked to provide access to education and health for Afghan women. And if you remember, she also delivered a remarkable, at the time when she was First Lady, a remarkable radio interview in which she called attention to all Americans about the rights of Afghan women. We will have Ms. Holly Kuzmich, who's Executive Director of the George W. Bush Institute, who will moderate the discussion. Ms. Kuzmich has worked closely with the Bush family in these efforts as Executive Director at the George W. Bush Institute, as well as Senior Vice President of the Bush Center. Following their discussion, I will also introduce our second featured and honorary guest, the First Lady of the Islamic Republic of Afghanistan, Her Excellency Rula Ghani. So if you would like to engage in the discussion, please use the hashtag #ACFrontPage. With that, I would like to now give the floor to First Lady Laura Bush and to the moderator, Ms. Holly Kuzmich. Over to you.
Well, good morning, Mrs. Bush. It's good to see you. It's so good to be with our friends at the Atlantic Council. We're appreciative of them putting on this event, and of course to Ambassador Dobriansky, who chairs our Women's Initiative Policy Advisory Council here at the Bush Center, who had a role in this as well.
Yeah, special thanks. Thank you to the Atlantic Council, and thank you very much for hosting Mrs. Ghani as well. She and I are good friends. We've been friends for all these years, and thank you for wanting to talk about this, because I think what's happening in Afghanistan is very important right now.
Well, Mrs. Bush, you have really been an advocate for the rights of Afghan women for almost 20 years now.
I know it is hard to believe.
Tell us why this is personal for you.
Well, I think right after September 11th, when the spotlight turned on Afghanistan, what we saw was a failed country. And it was failed because half of the population was left out. I remember what it was like. Women couldn't leave their home without being fully covered and without a male escort. And because of the years of war already with Russia and then the Taliban, many women they were widows. They didn't have someone to be able to leave their house from. And remember the other part, they couldn't be educated. They couldn't go to school. And the very idea of a country that leaves half of the population out is a failed country. And that's what Afghanistan was.
And you, as First Lady, knew you could use that platform
That's right.
to really be an advocate for them as well.
Could talk about women there. I made trips to Afghanistan. I met a lot of the women there. I brought some of the women who were particularly, like Sarabi, who had started a school in Bamiyan province, the same province where the Taliban had blown up those 6th century Buddhas that were a World Heritage Site. I brought her to the G8 when we hosted it at Sea Island, Georgia, so that the other First Ladies from other countries could meet her as well. There were a lot of countries that went together to support the people of Afghanistan, not just the United States.
Right. So you went, as First Lady, 3 times to Afghanistan. Talk about some of your memories of those trips.
Well, I remember particularly, she'd started a school there for girls, and I told her I would come. And then this chance to actually go there and see her. And I did see the remnants of those big 6th century Buddhas lying in rubble on the ground there in her district where she was. Of course, I became very good friends with Mrs. Ghani. I would always see our troops while we were there, go to Bagram Air Force Base and see them before, usually have dinner with them or something before I flew home.
One of the things you did when you traveled there was you signed the MOU to establish the American University of Afghanistan.
That's right.
Talk a little bit about that and its role in...
Well, the United States has a history of founding American universities. We have one in Beirut, I think, and several others around the world. And so we were able to establish the American University in Afghanistan, which continues today. Their recent valedictorian was a woman, which I think is really terrific. It's a really, I think, a very important role that the United States has played over the years in many countries, and that is founding these American universities. And of course, that university takes women and men. In fact, I think there are more women at the American University in Afghanistan right now than there are men. This, of course, is in a country that not that long ago, women weren't allowed to be educated at all.
So just a little context, in 2006, there were 50 students and very few women. Today, there are 1,700 students and more than half
Are women.
are women.
Isn't that great?
Yeah.
It's terrific.
And over 100 Fulbright scholars, and so many of them women. I mean, in 20 years, that's pretty remarkable.
That is
progress.
remarkable.
Yeah.
Really is. But also, I think it shows how hungry Afghan women are to be educated. Afghanistan before the Taliban was an educated country. Women and men were educated.
Right.
And then sadly, after the Taliban came in, they pretty much destroyed Afghanistan.
Right. So we've talked a little bit about education. You've highlighted that, and there have been so many other areas of progress for women, of course. What do you think the people of Afghanistan stand to lose if those gains are reversed?
Well, everything. They'll lose everything. I'm not that happy about the idea of negotiating with the Taliban. I think we should be negotiating with the legitimate government, elected government of Afghanistan. I think that we forget that America gives people a certain prestige. If we negotiate with the Taliban, then we're in some ways saying they're important, more important than the elected government. And do we want peace there? Absolutely. Would we like our troops to come home? Of course. But we still have troops in Berlin. Many, many years after World War II, we've kept troops in various places in the world. And not that I'm suggesting we have to do that in Afghanistan, but they're a very fragile democracy. And there are a lot of people, the Taliban, obviously, that would rather take over and have it be like it was before, a failed country. And they've made a lot of progress, and so I hope we'll continue to support the legitimate government of Afghanistan.
We've also seen gains for women in access to health care.
That's right.
We've seen more women be entrepreneurs in Afghanistan and grow the economy. I know you've gotten to meet some of those entrepreneurs and support some of those entrepreneurs over time. Well, we've talked a little bit about why it's so important to have women be educated. What does it mean for the leadership and decision-making of the country when you have women involved?
Well, if you have half the population left out, like I said before, you're a failed country. And it's very important to have both men and women, being able to contribute in every way to the country, being able to work and contribute to the economy, be able to contribute to the government, all of those things. It's really my mother was born 2 years before women achieved the right to vote in the United States, which is pretty amazing, isn't it? That she lived a long time. She lived till she was almost 100 years old. But the idea that even we were not that many generations ago, that women weren't allowed to vote. And I think it's important for us to be able to use what we know in building a democracy, what is important in building a democracy. And we are now in the midst really of that, talking of that again with Black Lives Matter and with all the other marginalized communities that may have been left out in our long history, even though our declaration wins with all people are created equal. I actually think it was all men are created equal. But I think we know from our own history how important it is to have everyone, every race, men and women, included in a democracy. That's what a democracy is. It's made up of all people with all different viewpoints.
Well, and studies have shown that having women involved in leadership levels brings more peace and stability to the country. So there's actual, research to show
exactly how important it is to have women involved.
Right. So many Americans are skeptical about why we're still involved and why they should still support the people of Afghanistan, and especially the women in Afghanistan. What would you say to them about why this matters?
Well, I would say that we have a moral obligation, really. to continue to support the people of Afghanistan. We went in early on to support them after September 11th. They've made great strides. Sadly, the Taliban has had the opportunity to come back in some ways. But I just feel like it's a really moral obligation to continue to support them. Afghanistan was a thriving country at one time, and we know what happened to it after the Taliban came in, and we don't want that to happen again. Yeah. I think that's why it's a moral obligation to continue to support the people there. And there are many people who do. The U.S. Afghan Women's Council, all the American women who looked at Afghanistan after September 11th and were shocked at the way women were treated there and figured out ways they could help.
Right.
I think of Connie Duckworth, who immediately started to helping women become entrepreneurs and make money, and then all the other great projects that American women have founded there in Afghanistan. And
right.
I think American women would say, let's keep supporting them.
Yeah. What message do you have for policymakers in the U.S. about what they can and should still be doing to support Afghan women?
Well, I think that they just should still be doing what we do already, which is give some financial support, a lot of financial support actually, to the government, not to the Taliban. They're dependent really on that as they build their economy, but they have been able to build an economy. And they've been able to build an economy because everyone can participate in it now, not just men.
Right.
And I think that, you know, we've given aid to countries for many years. And I think it's in our moral interest. I also think it's in our security interest to continue to try to send money to Afghanistan for a legitimate government and legitimate projects that are going on there.
Right, and we really have the ability to condition that aid
That's
on
right. We certainly
representation by women in the peace talks and in
That's
the
right.
government and
That's
in
right.
society in Afghanistan, and that's important. Well, Mrs. Bush, any words for the women of Afghanistan, because this is going to be live streamed and you may have women in Afghanistan paying attention to what you're saying.
Well, I think the women of Afghanistan know that I'm standing with them, than I have been for all these years. And President Bush, I know, would also say that he's standing with you all, and we hope for the very best for you. And I also want you to know how much I admire the way the women of Afghanistan have been able to step out and secure their rights and be real full contributing members to their economy and to their society in every way.
Yeah. Okay, well, Mrs. Bush,
Thanks
you.
so much.
Thank you for your
Thanks to the
continued
Atlantic
leadership.
Council.
And
thank you for hosting Mrs. Ghani especially.
Yes, thank you, and we will send it back to Ambassador
great.
Dobriansky.
Sounds great. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much, Holly, for a great interview. And Mrs. Bush, really, thank you so much again, not only for being with us here today, but also for your longstanding dedication to Afghan women. It gives me great pleasure, by the way, first, before we go to our featured guest, I'd like to mention that here in Washington, D.C., we are very fortunate to have Afghanistan's ambassador to the United States, Roya Rahmani. She has been a great partner with the Atlantic Council, supporting the causes of Afghanistan, and we're particularly grateful today for her making today's discussion with Afghanistan's First Lady Rula Ghani possible. Thank you so much, Ambassador. We are really appreciative of all your efforts, and thanks for being with us. And I'd also like to mention that we are also joined today by one of the Council's great partners on Afghanistan, and that's Stephen Heintz of the Rockefeller Brothers Foundation. Thank you, Stephen, for your support. We're really grateful, and also the importance of the Afghan Task Force. We just are grateful to be partnering with you and glad that you could be with us as well here today.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. I would like now to turn to Her Excellency, First Lady of Afghanistan, Rula Ghani, who is director of the Enabled Children Initiative, a charity that supports and advocates for Afghan children with disabilities who have been abandoned or orphaned. Now, since assuming the office of the First Lady in 2014, First Lady Ghani has worked very closely with Afghan women to create a more fair and just society. This has been really a core goal and objective of hers. Recently, Her Excellency, First Lady Ghani, has been a vocal advocate of ensuring that women are represented at the highest levels of the peace talks in Doha, and continues to work to ensure that women's rights and participation are preserved and also elevated throughout this process. We are just thrilled to have you with us today, Your Excellency, First Lady Ghani. With that, I would like to give the floor over to you and to Mrs. Mohib. Welcome.
Thank you, Paula. Thank you for all the things you've said. You've given me much too much credit, but I agree with you that the women have made incredible strides, but it is through their own volition and their own hard work. But please also accept my thanks. The Atlantic Council also should say that I'm extremely grateful that they've given me again another opportunity to speak to their fellow members. And I would like to also say that I'm also very grateful for Mrs. Laura Bush to have accepted to join in this program, and she never disappoints. She really spoke so well about Afghanistan, and it's true. It comes from the heart, and you can tell. You want to go ahead?
Sure. Thank you, Mrs. Ghani, and thank you, Paula. Thank you to the Atlantic Council and all of the viewers who are joining us virtually today. And most importantly, thank you, Mrs. Ghani, for being here for this very important discussion at this important time. I'll jump right in with the first question.
Let me first say there are a few things I'd like to say in terms of being a First Lady. I'm neither elected nor selected. So I consider myself a listener, a facilitator, an advocate, but I still live very close to the seat of power in Afghanistan. And as an old school journalist, I like to bear witness to what happens around me. So I'll be glad to speak about the things I know. But also, I would like to say that we have been going through a period of heightened violence that is really very disturbing. And to the families of the fallen soldiers and citizens, I want to assure them that I will try my best so that we get a durable and just peace. They will not have died in vain. Please.
Thank you, Bibibo. I want to come back to the issue of increased violence and the peace process later in the conversation, but I want to start by setting the scene for the viewers today. It's difficult to really appreciate the progress that has happened here in Afghanistan if you haven't been here to live it. And for the past 6 years, you've had an open door policy in your office. You've met literally thousands of women. You've traveled to the provinces. You've listened to their issues. When I walked into your office this evening, the corridor is full of photos from these meetings, from the floor to the ceiling. It's really something to see.
Yes.
So if you can just give us your perspective on the progress made by Afghan women and girls in society and politics.
Sure. 3 years ago, I had to do my annual report to the CSW at the UN, this conference on the state of women in the world. And 3 years ago, I said, they're now visible. You can see women everywhere, in the streets, in offices, in the government and all that. But today, what I can add is that not only are they visible, they're also active and effective. And there is not one day that goes by that I don't hear about a new woman that I hadn't heard from, or I meet a new person. And so in order to illustrate that, I went back to my schedule for the past week and I picked up 4 women that I met for the first time last week. And maybe we could have the first picture. I'm going to speak about 2 young women. I mean, young, they are in their early 30s. Palwasha is from Helmand. This is a picture you see. And she had come to my office because she wanted to give me a booklet she had written about breast cancer. Her sister had died from breast cancer. And she's the daughter of 2 doctors. She lives in Helmand in Nadali, which is one of the districts where violence erupted recently. And but still, she felt it was her duty to write this booklet, to put it together, to compile it, and so that her Afghan sisters can be informed of what to look for and when to go and reach out for help, for treatment. Let's have the second picture. The women you see sitting on the couch are all the board members of the Afghan Cancer Foundation, which we founded almost 4 years ago now. And I, as a facilitator, this is, you can see how I try to facilitate. I asked them to come when Palwasha came to give me her booklet. And they were very interested in meeting her. And I think they will be printing her booklet to distribute it all around Afghanistan. Next picture. In this picture, well, this is in Afghan tradition. You bring a shawl to put it on the shoulders of a woman that you're visiting. And Maria, the person who's putting the shawl on me, is an Uzbek from Faryab. She started as a school teacher, and then very soon after became a monitor and an implementer in the NSP, the National Solidarity Program, and the successor program that's called Citizen Charter. Let's go to this following picture. There you can see her. It has been now 2 years. She's the DOA in Faryab. DOA means Director of Women Affairs, which means she represents the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Faryab. Interestingly enough, she's an ambitious lady, and she came to see me to discuss how she could accede to a national position. So these 2 young women, you can see, are really trying to make every opportunity they have to be able to fulfill their own potential. Next picture, please. This is Zara Seper. She's a Hazara who grew up in Iran and became an activist at the age of 12, working in Afghan schools for the Afghan migrants there. She came back to Kabul, became a writer, and having studied law, she also was a bona fide public defender. She founded an organization for the protection of women and children, and she still writes from time to time for the local press and the international press. She is now the advisor to the Vice President Danesh. She is his advisor for human rights. She had been very affected by the attack on the maternity hospital, you remember, a couple of months ago, where women and babies were killed in the process of delivery. And she came to discuss with me 2 proposals. One for creating some kind of social security for families, and the other to create, to decide how to take care of children that have lost their mothers. I mean, newborns who have lost their mothers. It was really very touching from her. Next picture. This is the last picture I'll be showing you. This is the 4th woman. Her name is Karima Faryabi. And she is older than all the other 3. She studied medicine. She graduated from the School of Medicine in Balkh. and has then worked with UNICEF and with Doctors Without Borders. And then when the Taliban came, she just decided to have a free clinic and just worked as a free, as a doctor with helping all her compatriots. All this in the province of Faryab. But she's also known to have, she has some sort of fame to have alerted her compatriots to the possible harms of the medicine oxytocin. At the time, it was used totally without real understanding of its effects. She is slated to become our Minister of Economy, and she had come to visit me to get to know it was a get to know each other visit, a courtesy visit. Thank you with the pictures. What I want to say is that you can see here these 4 women, 4 different trajectories, and yet they're all trying to make the best of all the opportunities they have around themselves to be able to become strong and effective, and to be able to be actors, real strong actors in the rebuilding of the country. It's really very rewarding to meet them.
And of course, these are women who have access to education. Others, particularly in the rural areas, may not.
I'm glad you've asked this question. We do have still a very large proportion of women who cannot read or write, and we're trying to do something about it. It's taking a lot of time, but these women also can think, and you find that out. Last year, we had a program where we were consulting women about what they thought about peace. And we visited, when I say we, it was my office, but with other institutions, both governmental and civil society institutions. We visited all 34 provinces and sat down with women and asked them what did they think about peace. What were the obstacle of peace and obstacle for peace, and how did they think we could avoid or resolve these obstacles? They were incredibly sophisticated. They really knew. They knew not only what was happening around them, but they knew what was happening in the country, in the region, in the world. They had very good opinions. If you are interested in knowing what these women, we consulted with 15,000 women, what these women's opinions were, you can go to my office's website, which is firstlady.gov.af, and look up Women for Peace. And there you will see, and you'll have in English, a whole summary of what were their demands and their observations. So Afghan women are really very, very much aware of what's happening. And I think they are progressing very, very fast. It's almost exponential. And I'm very proud of them.
You've taken us to the peace process, talking about the women's consultative jirga,
Yes.
Which I want to ask you about. But before I get to my question, I just want to do a bit of stock taking on where things are right now in the peace process. The Taliban are in violation of their February 29th agreement with the US government. They have ramped up violence across the country. You mentioned Helmand, and citizens are bearing the brunt of that. At the same time, this week, a senior al-Qaeda commander who is on the FBI's most wanted list was found and killed. He was being harbored by the Taliban here in Afghanistan. And the word from Doha is that they're refusing to negotiate in earnest with the Afghan negotiating team. So Afghan women are watching this unfold. What are they telling you? How are they feeling about the process unfolding in Doha?
They're not just telling me, they're telling the world. They really are very active. Ever since they figured out that they were being sidelined by the Doha talks, because unfortunately, in its first appearance, it had no space for women. Mm-hmm. And they really have made their voices heard and protested very clearly and reactivated all their networks, even networks with Europe and with the US. Don't get me wrong. Afghan women want peace. Afghan men too. We all want peace. Who wouldn't, after living for 40 years in such a situation of insecurity and of violence at every corner? But we don't want peace at any cost. And we have some very clear ideas of how we conceive that peace. As I said, we did consultations with the women over a period of 6 or 8 months, and we went everywhere, every corner of Afghanistan. This is for the women, but the men too have started realizing what they want for peace. The Taliban have to understand that we have no problems for them coming back to Afghanistan. They are our brothers, they are our sisters, and if they are Afghans, they have the right to live in Afghanistan. And actually, some of them already do live. And there is nothing that says on their forehead that they are Taliban. And probably in the street, there are quite a few people that might be Talib that we are seeing. But they need to understand that if they want to come and live back in Afghanistan, they have to adhere by the law of the land. They cannot come and impose their own convictions, their own brand of religion on the rest of the population. Let's do the math. We are almost 36 million people. They are, 100,000, 200,000, 300,000. So where did they come from wanting to impose on us certain things they believe in? Finally, what I would like to say is that there is a lot of confusion in what's happening in Doha. A confusion, as I said at first, it was not known. It was said that maybe the women should not be there. It was really it was not known who they wanted to negotiate with. They said they would not negotiate with the government. It was a big charade. I personally never called it Doha peace talks. I called it the Doha charade. And up till now, we're still not really clear about what the Taliban want. If ever you have followed carefully, you've seen that our team of negotiators is there with them. They've been there for almost more than a month, and they're trying to set up procedures. And so when they were discussing on what base should the negotiation go, the Taliban said, "Oh, but we have this agreement with the US. We want that to be the basis for negotiation." Our team said, "Well, we also have an agreement with the US. It's a different agreement. So let's negotiate instead on the basis of the Holy Quran and the Islamic precepts." They wouldn't accept. They still want to do it on the basis of that agreement. Well, that agreement, which was signed, I think, in August, so I'm not really quite sure when it was signed. Anyway, in February, that agreement has been published, but partially. There are several clauses that have not been made public. And we are still in the dark. We don't know what they have agreed, but for some reason they must have been promised something that must be very appealing to them. For them to have forgotten about the cloak of religion in which they wrap themselves, it's really for us. It's very important to understand what the Taliban stand for. Also, there is a thing that here in Afghanistan, we have freedom of expression. We have freedom of expression. That means that on TV, anyone can come, and we have a whole We have a whole tradition of roundtables and of discussions, and everybody says whatever is on their mind. And we've had Talibans who have come and spoken. And me, myself, with my own ears, I've heard one of them saying that women are half-wits and ignorant of religion. ناقص العقل وناقص الدين. The Taliban have not changed. And the increased violence shows that they're still following the same strategy of fear and intimidation. This is not how we like to live. So we still have a lot of questions regarding the Taliban and regarding the so-called peace process.
Bibi Gul, you mentioned unknowns in this process and rumors that are being generated. There's also been a traceable narrative over the last year or so that women's expectations or their desire to preserve and expand their rights in a peace agreement may be some kind of obstacle to peace. And they could have to be sacrificed to achieve peace. What would be your response to this narrative?
It's very true that at first, when the Doha talks started, there were not only rumors, but you had people, often foreigners, saying that, well, you'll have to quietly relinquish all the rights you have, and you have to go back to your homes because this is the cost of peace. This is why the women stood up so quickly. This is why they said, no, this process is wrong from the start. We women should be part of it, and we should be able to speak up what we have to say. What they've done was very interesting. They have tried to find a line of argument that could apply both to them and to the men. You see, women in Afghanistan now don't feel themselves just they are there for women issues. They are there as national actors. And so what they've done with all the discussions, because there we had discussions every week, there would be a discussion somewhere. Every embassy organized something, every NGO organized something, every institution, even my office did a symposium on peace. But what happened is that we had like this, it was the Doha talks had a very good effect in as much as that it made us think through what life would be, what are the things we really care for, how would the Taliban rule over us if ever there is power sharing. And we realized in the process that we have a great constitution. We have a constitution that is an Islamic constitution that blends both the precepts of Islam and democracy, because Islam has an aspect of democracy that is very strong. It also is a very inclusive constitution. For example, when it talks about what schools of thought of Islam we should have, it talks both about the Hanafi school, which is for the Sunnis, and the Jafari school, which is for the Shias. So all the Afghans are taken care of. It talks about the equality between all Afghans, men and women, that there is no Afghan that's better than another Afghan. It talks about, it talks about freedom of speech, which we really enjoy, freedom of movement, freedom of assembly. It also talks about free market economy. So basically, it's a constitution that allows all sorts of different various groups to coexist and to live together under the rules of this constitution. And there is this expression in Dari that when a person wants to say she really likes the constitution, she says, I see myself in that constitution. And it's true, every Afghan sees themselves in that constitution. So there was that discovery that brought back people together, but also in the discussions, we found out that often in Dari we used the word regime and government, nizam wa dawlat. We use them intermittently. But actually regime is something, it's the Islamic Republic, and government is that government that is there for 5 years and can change. Can every 5 years there is an election, it can only have 2 mandats and all that. So by clarifying this, the women gave an opportunity for people who felt that they were in opposition to the government but wanted a republic, that yes, they could be part of the same movement of saying, we want an Islamic republic. We don't think we will be comfortable in an Islamic emirate. So basically, I feel that the women have been formidable interlocutors to the Taliban. They have really managed to rise from everyday issues and see the big picture.
Thank you. In the interest of time, I'll just combine my last 2 questions, but they're very closely related. Looking positively into the future, what do you believe is the way forward for peace? What do we need to achieve peace, not just from Afghanistan, but of course the international community, Afghanistan's foundational partner, the United States? What is needed to achieve peace?
As I said, everybody wants peace. This is really something that is for everyone, and I'm still cautiously optimistic that it will happen. Achieving peace is going to take time, especially building peace, especially after the time of signing whatever agreement we have. But for that, you need a very strong government. A weak government cannot enforce peace. And soon after, the confrontations will carry on. Strong government is what we are witnessing, is what we are seeing. A strong government is a government that can deal with COVID. COVID-19, for example, we have managed to secure food for everyone. We have managed to, within the medical infrastructure that we have managed to give the advice that was needed and to try and treat the people where. Fortunately, we didn't have too many people who contracted COVID-19. We have also provided jobs for people who were without jobs, for manual labor, big projects and things of the sort, but enough for them to have 300 AFs a day, which will help them have some food on their table and help them survive. So this government is not a puny government. It's a very well strides in economy. We have built corridors. We have the TAPI line is now starting, is underway. A lot of things happen. It's also a government that has really managed its relationship with neighboring countries. We have opened up Central Asia, and we're now part of Central Asia. It's really a big feat, and it helped us with getting, for example, grain from Kazakhstan for the COVID thing. As I mentioned, the government is inclusive of all Afghans, and the Afghans in the government there is a very strong effort to serve the people, and the Afghans realize that this government is really serving them, is helping them. So there is support for the government, no matter what the media says about the few opponents. And it is also a government that sees things forward. We already have almost ready a plan for 2021 to 2024. And that is called the Afghanistan National Peace and Development Project, in which there are three pillars: peace building, Because as we said, peacemaking is something, but peace building will be difficult. State building, and the third one is market building. So basically, I think that we are ready for peace. We are ready to make the effort. I'm just wondering, what are the Taliban wanting? Do they really want peace? That's my question. As far as our international partners that have been with us for so many times and for so many years, and I want to thank all of them for their perseverance in trying to help us and in trying to make things better for us. And actually, we are succeeding slowly, slowly. There are two things, though, I would like to ask from them. One is regarding researchers that try to do research on Afghanistan. It's a little bit a pet peeve of me because I read all the researchers. Please don't rely on the media. Please come to Afghanistan and see what are the things on the ground. Talk to people, talk to many different peoples. Don't talk to just one little bubble. Because I'm seeing more and more researchers that are not really, that are outdated. They would be fine for 4 or 5 years ago, but they don't reflect, they don't. I saw a research on political participation of women that was announced a few months ago. It didn't even have the role that women played in Doha and in the peace process. So what kind of research it is? Yes, it said what it was before. The second thing I would like to ask for is clarity. We get so many, we hear so many voices with so many different messages, sometimes dissonant messages. And it's really very confusing. The Doha talks are a case in point. I hope I did not talk too much.
Not at all. All very important points. And this is a conversation that could continue. I hope it will continue on different platforms, in different venues. Thank you, Mrs. Ghani, for lending your voice to this discussion today. And I'll hand it back over to Paula. I'll give you the last word before I hand over to Paula.
As a last word, it's obvious. I am so thankful, and I feel always so touched to see so many people being interested in what's happening in Afghanistan. Thank you for your interest. Thank you for persevering in wanting to figure out ways of helping us. And well, God bless.
Thank you.
Paula.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, Lael, for superb moderation, and Your Excellency, Mrs. Ghani. Thank you so much for your being with us this evening, your time. We're very grateful for everything that you've said, for the clarity of your comments, and also your courage and your dedication. Just thank you. We are most appreciative. I look at both of the conversations, and truly, what an incredible set of conversations that we have had today. The insights that have been provided by former First Lady Laura Bush, and also Her Excellency First Lady Rula Ghani, are really a model to all who seek a more fair and just society. Thank you both, Mrs. Ghani and Mrs. Bush, for your inspiring insights, and also to the wonderful moderators, Holly Kuzmich and also Lael Mohib. Thank you both. And I also would like to express a debt of gratitude to the Atlantic Council's South Asia Center, and also to the George W. Bush Institute for hosting these key discussions. It has really been not only an honor, but I also think truly insightful and very thoughtful, the conversations that we have heard today about the future of Afghanistan, about the peace negotiations, peace talks, and also about the future of Afghan women and Afghan society. As was said, it should not be an issue. It has to be part of the process. So to conclude, let me just emphasize that in Afghanistan, but also everywhere in the world where turbulence and instability prevail, we must remember that there is no peace without justice, and there is no justice without equality. Thank you so much for being with us today. Thank you.